the guy who pays me the most, I just go work for him. I don't really give a shit. I could do anything I wanted on the planet. I was riding high, really, right?
Welcome to the Fantastic Score. Everybody has a story to share.
Yeah, so basically, like we talked on email, kind of wanted to know, like I know you did your started your and then somehow you ended up in Russia. So yeah, so how did that happen?
So that happens because you don't get into IT. So yeah, my background obviously is I'm from a Tamilian Brahmin. So Tamilian Brahmins, every Tamilian Brahmin in India has to go to IT. That's the rule. People know that. You don't get into IT, you don't
Were you like kind of like born and brought up in Kolkata or
yeah, so yeah, I was born in actually Assam. My dad worked for Coal India, and Coal India, as you know, is coal mining company in India. Assam has yeah, and then I did my high school, went up to high school in Calcutta, and then obviously didn't get into any of these. And I had no plan B. I thought I'd get into any one of these areas, and then not getting into any one of them. Like 8 different all the different and these opportunities actually came up. It's funny because of Coal India, actually, obviously back in the day, Coal India used to buy a lot of equipment from Russia, and so my dad had met somebody from Russia, and like, oh, there was a lot of students. Russia was opening up at the time. This was early 90s, so early to mid 90s, really 95. And Russia was opening up, and one thing led to the other, and I said like, well, fuck it, I want to leave India. So Russia is better. Anything is better than hanging out after bombing all your exams. And like my mom's actually a developer. She's got her master's in computer I think MCS is what it's called, Master's in Computer Application, or MCS or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, so she's been a huge inspiration for me in terms of me kind of getting into computers and developing and all that stuff. Sure, she's been a huge inspiration.
You had told me that I think she programmed in COBOL or something like that.
Yeah, so back in the day it was COBOL, right? So she did funny story. She wrote the payroll system so she used to work for a company called IBP, which is I think Indo-Burma Petroleum. Like right now it's Indian Oil. I think they got merged with Indian Oil over all these years. And so she wrote the payroll system. So they had, I think, over 40,000 employees. So they used to run automated payroll, right? So everybody used to get the payroll checks. And so somebody had to have a database of all the employees and print out all the checks. So her program was to kind of like look at the database of, and print out all the checks realistically. And there was a funny story she was telling me once, that she had to fly to Bombay because there was some bug in the software and they could not run payroll that Friday effectively, right? So they could not run payroll that Friday. So the general manager for the Bombay office, like, I don't care, send somebody over to fix this because I have 10,000 people who are not going to get paid if we don't run payroll on Friday, right? So she had to fly in, and that was obviously, this was early 90s. There's no internet or anything like that. So you had to fly in to fix a bug. So like in hindsight, I think those 2 years were the shittiest years of my life, in between, I think 11th and 12th grade. Because I think the pressure was on to get into, crack these J's. I think even today, I think there's tremendous amount of pressure being put on kids at that age, frankly, right? And so exactly. Sharmaji beta, you didn't do this. That's the kind of conversation. Like, oh my God, that guy's a failure because I don't know, he couldn't do something
Yeah.
realistically.
Right.
So I think that the cumulative pressure, right? I mean, it's not just my folks. My folks don't care that much, but the cumulative pressure was pretty high, and so that's why I think that's what I mean when I say kind of the pressure. And I think that the pressure probably still exists in India
Yeah,
in terms
definitely.
of trying to get certain things done. And what bothers me still is like it's perceived as an existential kind of model realistically, right? So if it's like if you don't do it, you're kind of fucked. I mean, which is not
Right.
true clearly, but I wish there was like, yeah, if you don't do it, yeah, fine, you didn't get in, and move on, try to do something different, and make something else. And it's not one. There's a very narrow view of what things should be done as. My dad, I used to go to my dad's office and I started programming Visual Basic. I think my first program that I wrote was the tic tac toe. Effectively, the crisscross
Game.
tic tac
The
toe. So
game.
I wrote the game. I wrote that game.
Yeah, you didn't do
Go
the
ahead.
Hello World program, man. Like that's the standard.
I mean, obviously the Hello World was there, but something more interesting
Where exactly in Russia were you?
in Moscow, actually, right? In Moscow, yeah. So, back then, like effectively, most of the educational institutions in Russia, they were kind of opening up for foreign currency. So Russia was going through a foreign currency crisis. So they kind of used this as a mechanism to get international students into. I mean, even today, one of the things that's a kind of dirty little secret. I was talking to actually some of the UC guys, and even with this COVID stuff, for example, a large portion of university revenue comes from international students. International students come, first of all, they pay full price. Obviously, it's a source of revenue. And with this whole kind of lockdown, I think the source of revenue is dried up. People can kind of complain about students and this and that, like these students are coming away doing this, but actually the universities are making it, at least, 5, 10, 15% of their budget is coming from, revenue from students, international students in the States at least. And so now, like that revenue, is obviously not there anymore. Nobody's showing up, and nobody's going to pay that kind of money for like a Zoom meeting, for a Zoom call, Zoom kind of experience from Berkeley or somewhere there, right? So that's going to be very interesting to see how these things pan out over the next year or two in terms of when international students are locked down. That means revenue to these schools are dried out. I would say, like, for me at least, like that experience kind of calibrated all the other risks that I've taken in my life. So everything else I've taken from a risk perspective actually pales in comparison to the risk I took going to Russia from India at the age of, I don't know, 16 or 17.
Yeah, I was going to come that. Like you said, Indian kids go out of the house, but yeah, they go to the metro cities in India. They don't leave the country and they don't go to Russia at the age of 16, 17, right? So that's something which actually tells us, what metal you're made of. So
it built me, right? I mean, it's another way to look at it. It's like, because of that, I'm able to take bigger risks, really, right? So if you go through like an experience like that, so every other risk is like pretty small compared to, I've started a bunch of companies, invested a bunch of money, lost a bunch of money, but all that stuff is quite frankly actually not that big of a deal compared to hanging out in the streets of Russia. Right.
So, like, was it like kind of like obviously we just seen Russia in movies and stuff, like, so like were there any like actual like dangerous situations there or something like that?
Yeah, it was at the time. It was, I don't know how it is right now. I mean, I left Russia in '97. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, as crazy as some of what you've kind of heard, like mafia was rampant. I think this is the first time I saw a dead body with a gunshot to some lady's temple, lying on the side of the road.
Jeez.
Yeah, so we were just walking and so like, oh, there's some lady like hanging out, like not hanging out, but lying, and then there was like a trickle of blood from the temple down to the
streets.
Yeah, just one of the streets, and I mean not all the time, but I've seen that once.
Yeah. Once is too many, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. We were like, we guess we just keep walking, and there was a bunch of cops mulling around, and like all the kinds of things were there. And we're like, oh yeah, it's somebody. At first we thought it was an accident, right? Somebody had kind of hit somebody or something. And then we realized, like, well, actually, it's not an accident because there's no car around there, because there's a place where there's no car, but it was just like, and you could see the trickle of blood from her temple down to the thing. I was like, whoa, that's pretty, scary, interesting, many different emotions put together. But that was kind of one of the experiences. Clearly, as I've said on emails, So we've we were obviously a bunch of Indian dudes. There were a lot of skinheads, a lot of kids running around trying to beat up people who are obviously not white. So clearly that was part of the equation. And here's a funny story about I think this is kind of it's actually true for most Indians, and I'm obviously from India. Most Indians are they're not very kind of as Indians as a collective group, they're not very collective realistically, right? So it's we rarely look out for each other. Obviously we know that, but so we used to get beat up. We never were able to even though the number of the guys in the hostel, is the dorms, the hostel, we had enough guys, but we could never retaliate. But once a couple of Sri Lankans got beaten up, right? And the Sri Lankans are badasses, in my opinion, amongst everybody I know for all the different ethnicities. They first of all, they stick together, and they have massive amount of risk-taking ability. So you know what they did? They were fuck. So what happened was we used to, from our dorms to the university was about a 1 mile walk, right? So everybody used to walk. And that's where some guy, if you're walking alone with somebody, a group of 5 or 6 teenagers come and kind of beat you up or kind of, cram you down. So if you're alone, but if you're going in a group, you can't, nothing can happen, but you can't go in a group every time because everybody's got schools that, things that are different schedule, right? So now the Sri Lankans, what they did was so you always got caught up alone, right? If you're in a group, nothing happened, but if you're alone, you got caught up. So they wanted to figure out who these guys were that were catching us. And so they sent one Sri Lankan guy as bait back and forth while they kind of a group of guys kind of waited for them. This guy went back and forth as bait couple of times, and then these guys came, and then these guys pounced back on them and beat the shit out of those kids.
So you just did the graduation, right? You didn't do post graduation.
Nah, bro. Once I'm not academically, I'm once I start making money, I'm why do I need to do anything anymore? Come on, dude.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So started making money. So let's come to that. I think it was, I think, 3rd year of your graduation. So when was the QuestionPro born?
Yeah, so I think the way I got into the business is or at least got into some of it, because I was I started working on campus outside, literally from the first 3 months I landed in Provo, frankly. So that's frankly because of necessity. So I had $3,000 with me when I came to the States, and I basically my math was I had my first semester tuition was I said $1,800. So we have $1,200 remaining. So within 6 months I had to find a job and kind of continue on, really. And thankfully, jobs, finding a job, minimum wage job is actually pretty reasonably straightforward. On campus also, there were tons of jobs for all kinds of stuff. So I started doing tech support, actually. So I used to do tech support for all the professors and the students and faculty members and students at BYU itself for the social science school. And I started, frankly, I was making enough money, and then one thing led to the other, and I started doing consulting work, and then I learned a bunch of things, and I started doing my own stuff. So even by the time I graduated, I was actually, doing a ton of consulting work. And I would argue that, it was a great time to graduate. It was the beginning of the .com boom, or kind of in the middle of the .com boom, and everybody wanted to build a website. And I learned Perl and all that stuff back in the day. Perl was the only CGI script, so I kind of, self-taught myself Perl and all that stuff. It was pretty easy stuff. And that was, everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted to build an e-commerce site. Everybody wanted to build something on the internet, take their current system and move it online. So going back to QuestionPro, a professor, market research professor, called Scott Smith. He was a market research professor at BYU. So he cornered me, and he kind of came to the computer science lab and said, "Hey, I want somebody to develop me a survey tool or survey engine." And I said, "How much are you going to pay me?" And $17 an hour. I might do a lot more for $17 an hour, really, right? So So that's how I got started. It was me, another Russian, actually, totally coincidentally, another Russian dude. So we built the first, tool or the engine around it, and then uh, and so yeah, we built the first tool around it, and then that's how I got started. But then we can obviously, and his son actually, Brian was the guy who was the sales guy. I was the tech guy. Scott was the professor. He was the CEO. That's how I kind of got into the thing. And honestly, I didn't even think about it. It's like, yeah, it's kind of some side gig. So everybody's got a side hustle. It's one of the side hustles, realistically. And honestly, that's about it. And
So
then I
like,
left. Mhm.
yeah, so at that amount of time, there was no plan to, like just, get graduate and do a tech job somewhere
I
in
just
big
needed
company,
money. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just needed some extra cash. Honestly, that was the point, right? I mean, everybody needed extra cash. Play
But
money
what
to
was
do
the
all.
plan? I mean, like you had some plan in your mind of like what after graduation?
Yeah, we'll go after graduation. I'm just gonna go do his work. Honestly, just
That's it.
like
Yeah.
work for somebody else. Realistically, that's how I decided. Right? And this was a side hustle. So I was just gonna go out, and I went to Seattle, just find a job. Typical little bullshit, really. Find a
Right.
job, do some, do some stuff. And then yeah, that's why I got a ton of. I mean, again, I would say like again, when I graduated, it was pretty awesome. Like I used to post my resume online. I used to get like 20 people calling me. I didn't even have to search for jobs. It was hard as fuck. Clearly, right? Like again, super lucky. Like if you graduated into now 99 2000, then with like a reasonable amount of Java experience, because Java itself was like frankly like 2 years old or 1 year old.
Yeah.
It had just been released, and server-side Java programming was just taking on effectively in the beginning of 2000. Java was obviously, if you guys remember, was originally built as an applet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I built another tool like exactly like LivePerson, like an online chat, like for customer service, actually. For customer service, I built a tool because back then the only way to do it was using an applet, if you think about it,
Right.
right?
Right.
The WebSocket connection, there was no WebSocket connections, clearly. The only way to have a socket connection from a web browser was through an applet,
Yeah. Right.
if you
Yeah.
remember that. And so I built an applet that was like a kind of a like to solve the customer service kind of chat use case. Again, it's one of those things. I built it, kind of didn't know what to do with it, kind of abandoned it. In hindsight, obviously, I should have chased it down and done something with it. But that's true for many people for across the board. Like it doesn't matter what the idea is, if you can't execute on it, generally the idea is useless.
Yeah.
So,
True.
So yeah, coming back to like the service software thing. So you guys kind of built it and launched it, and so like what was it called at that time?
Survey Pro. So it was called Survey Pro.
Survey Pro.
Yeah. So Scott owns Survey Pro, and then and then we had a couple other domain names, right? SurveyZ.com, because Survey Pro, somebody else, another company in Seattle actually owned the trademark for Survey Pro. And that was a pitching contest between Scott and that guy. They built like a software, like not a web-based solution, but a software solution for surveys, really, right? I think that company's out of business now. It's a company called Appian. Totally happened to be out of Seattle, randomly out of Seattle too.
Okay.
So I think so that was happening, and then obviously then I was like, there was no money in the bank. I was not getting paid. And then I said like, okay, we kind of like separated, we parted ways. We said like, you keep Survey Pro, I keep QuestionPro. We kind of split the code base. Originally, the original code base was actually written in C, believe it or not. Like the Russian and I wrote the original code base in C, which was kind of weird, but anyway, it was super complicated to maintain. So then I rewrote the whole thing in Java, and then we split out the code base, and we said, okay, you keep Survey Pro, I keep QuestionPro, and then we kind of went off on our separate ways around in 2003, 2005 is when we kind of, not exactly when, but around that time is when we split apart. And at the same time, like I was without a job because I was doing consulting work prior to that.
Okay.
And then like obviously the .com shit hit the fan, and everybody was out of the job. Like every single tech guy I knew was pretty much out of the job. The consultants were the first to get out, really, right?
Yep.
And so we were pretty much without a job, and we were like, okay, we got this tool, we got this platform, and we have 0 customers, so let's kind of figure out what we can do with it. And we started working on it. And I teamed up with another guy called Kevin. Kevin was kind of with me in that consulting company that we used to work for together, and we kickstarted. So I told Kevin, dude, you want us to do this thing? You know, he's like, well, we're not doing anything reasonably interesting anyway, so you might as well do this shit. Like, what the fuck are, you know, it's not that there are tons of people giving us like, you know, jobs. And that's why we started off.
So when you talked with Kevin, like there was a minimum viable web-based survey tool that was ready.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So I told him like, look, I've been working on it for the last couple of years kind of as a side hustle. And he's like, great, like, let me just come on board and see if I can help you, and we can do this thing together. And we shook hands and we kind of started working on it together.
So in between this, like I have a question. So from UT, so you were in Seattle, right? When you started this, when you went to Seattle?
In 2000, right after graduation. So I graduated and I went to Seattle.
So why Seattle? Why not Silicon Valley? Why not any other place? Why Seattle?
I got a job here. That's another awesome story. Like, so I was like hustling, right? So I was like, shit, I need a job. Anyway, and classic, I made the classic mistake of like, the guy who pays me the most, I just go work for him. I don't really give a shit. I could do anything I wanted on the planet. I was riding high, really, right? And so I talked to this, actually at the time, like there's some dude, actually Desi dude out of Microsoft. And so he calls me and says like, oh, we're going to build this amazing, some amazing application. I'm like, I don't even give a shit what you want to build. I don't care. I literally I don't give a shit. I didn't even listen to him. I put it on mute or something and I just kind of was doing other stuff. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, how much are you going to fucking pay me? That's the only question. Like, all right, I'll pay you 80 grand. I'm like, fuck, I'm in. Let's do it. Right? I don't even look at the company. I don't look at anything, literally anything, right? I'm like, dude, I'm getting paid. Who gives a shit? I can build anything I want. How does it matter what the company does? So I show up in Seattle. So I literally okay, I'm done. I wanted to get out of Utah. So up in Seattle, first day on the job, I'm excited. This is my first job. I'm super excited. But I had a ton of experience by that time, right? I'd been building sites, building e-commerce platforms and everything else. So I knew what to do. And then the guy's like, yeah, don't worry, we'll do something. Here's some random ass shit that you can do, really. Give me some stupid little work to do. And there were about 15 guys in the company. And so it's not a small company. It's not a 1 or 2 person shop. There were 15 people. And so I'm like, okay, fine. A week goes by, and then I go up to the boss, the main guy, the CEO. I'm like, well, actually, I still don't understand. What are you guys trying to do? I literally did not understand. Okay. And he looks at me and is like, oh, we're going to build B2B software. Okay. I'm like, wait, B2B software? What the fuck does that mean? There's nothing called B2B. It's a category, right?
Right.
Yeah. We will build this software where buyers will come and people will come and buy and magic will happen. I'm like, wait, I still don't understand what you're trying to do. Are you building an eBay marketplace? Like, no, it's for B2B software. I'm like, dude, again, stop talking about B2B fucking software. It doesn't make any sense to me, right? I remember distinctly after that meeting, I'm like, I come out of that meeting, I'm like, this guy fucking has no fucking idea what. He has just read fucking on TechCrunch or fucking the equivalent of TechCrunch at the time. Some businesses are going online, so I need to be online, so I'll do something. I'm like, dude, and I quit the job. The next day, I quit the job. I was like, okay, lesson learned. At least look at what the company does for a living before you join. Doesn't matter if they pay you. Doesn't matter what the job function is. You have to wrap your head around what is it that they're trying to do. And if they have a clear idea, then okay, you can join. Then if they don't have a clear idea, then no matter how smart you are or dumb you are or how much you get paid, it's not going to work out. And obviously that company went out of business in the next 6 months, clearly, right? It was one of those rich Microsoft guys who had made a ton of money in Microsoft stock. It was like, oh yeah, I'm going to throw some money around and build something. I mean, it's not that he didn't lose money. He lost a ton of money, but he had no idea what he was doing, quite frankly, at the time. Yeah.
So India initially, the idea was just to do tech support there, and then slowly moved up to engineering.
Yeah, we didn't even think about it, honestly. I wish I could tell you, I thought about all these things. I didn't think about it. At the time, I just, probably even today, I just think about hey, what do we need to do tomorrow? Is kind of like one of the ways. And so, yeah, I mean, and then one thing led to the other. Then, Sanket came on board, and then Virat said like, hey, let me just go into development, and he started helping out with development, and one thing led to the other, and then we kind of grew that team. Then Adi came on board. He was originally doing support. Then we started seeing like, well, shit, this guy can sell. And so we started using him for sales, and we built out the sales team, and so on and so forth. And that is,
I have a question. I have a question. Like I always wondered this. Like what was Survey Console, man? Like I never understood like the concept behind that thing, man. Like it was pretty much the same shit. Like so, what was the idea there?
Yeah, it's kind of like a new idea. Like there was a period of time where like there was a chance that we would not get the QuestionPro domain because obviously because there was a pretty reasonable probability that Scott would not give it to me effectively, right? So when we were going through the divorce proceedings, if you will, so I that was my backup plan. Is to say like, well, if you don't give me the domain, I can build another brand. And then we kept it. For some reason we kept it for SEO and all kinds of purposes. We kept it. We got traffic, so we had multiple products, multiple brands, and probably in hindsight, probably not a great idea. So, I think it was opportunistic at the time. I think in hindsight, I'd probably say that put your energy in one thing and probably grow that faster, better. But we were dissipated a little bit. But again, live and learn.
So when I joined, like obviously, like I was doing support, and like at that time, like I started at QuestionPro, and I think the support we used to do support for server analytics as well. Like the teams hadn't split up at that time, so I kind of understood like QuestionPro was kind of like the self-service thing, and server analytics was like enterprise customers. And then one day, Sanket told me like this is another thing like Survey Console, and you have to do support about this. And I asked him the same question, and asked like a couple of other people, and nobody realistically gave me any actual answers around that. But yeah, that's what.
So when it's a good case study. When you don't get a real answer, that means it's bullshit. so that's the reality of life, right? So like the same thing, like I told a story, like if you don't get a real answer, that means like they don't have the answers, and that's fine. I mean, it is, it's kind of a little bit of bullshit, and so, yeah, it is what it is. Really, it was a bad idea. I mean, in hindsight, clearly it's a bad idea.
Yep. Just one more question, man. Like, so what's
sure. What is next? Yeah, make sure I sell QuestionPro. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kidding. I mean, right now, I mean, things are, I don't know. I mean, there's no point planning in my mind, at least. Like, every plan that I had goes out of the window, when random shit like COVID hits. So, no, I think in general, I'd say like, this is definitely, as we've grown, it's a different experience for me also in terms of what I'm doing. Definitely, I love what I do right now. I come up with, I have the power to execute on new ideas. I have the capacity. I have obviously an amazing team around us. We can build whatever the hell we feel like building, do whatever we feel like doing. And so that's, that's pretty empowering, at least for me, it's very empowering. And it's, and I want to, I think I told the story, like, I think I am definitely, super motivated when we can provide and we can build something of reasonable scale. And I think I was definitely like when I, obviously with you guys, when we were at the, a couple of years ago, when we were at the big event that we had in India with us, when we had the whole team there, I think that was very, very motivating and empowering and emotional for me, at least, in terms of seeing that many people. We built a company from scratch with that, at least at a minimum, employs this many people. That itself is a good deal, I would argue. So going back to kind of your direct question on like, hey, what's next? I'd say whatever comes along. Honestly, there are lots of opportunities that have come along. We can, whatever new ideas we have, we can implement them. We have the capacity to implement them, execute on them. We have, clearly, you guys know this, we have a great roadmap ahead of us on QuestionPro. The market's pretty big. So that's why I'm like, another way to look at it is like, yeah, we are kind of like a distant number 3, maybe a number 4 player in this market, but it's incumbent on us to get to number 1 or 2. And it's really a matter of execution, and it's a good challenge. At least for me, it's a good
Mhm.
challenge. It's like, okay, can we move from where we are to something better and something bigger, professionally at least. So that's kind of my I'm sticking to that game. That is, I don't want to leave and start another startup. I just want to kind of see if we can grow this thing, grow this
Right.
thing beyond where it is right now, and scale it really. I think that's the challenge right now that we have in terms of scaling is the biggest problem, which is a different set of challenges from like zero to one. And zero to one, I've done it a couple of times now with idea scale, failed a couple of times
Right.
with second prism and all kinds of shit really.
Yeah.
And now I think my kind of professionally, I think what drives me and motivates me is like, how can we go from 10 to 100 realistically?
Right.
So that's kind of the professional challenge that I have, at least for myself. So which I'm
Mhm.
working on day in day out. I'm gonna stick to that till I get it. Like everything else, persistence and perseverance is the kind of the name of the game in a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
these kind of models, if you will.